You conjugate a deponent verb just like you would a regular verb. You go to the second principal part, the infinitive. For the verb hortor, that infinitive is hortari. Just like a regular verb, you take off the last two letters, which in a regular verb's case would be re, but with a deponent it's going to be ri. Take that off. To this stem, you're going to add your endings. So if I wanted to say he urges, I would add tor. My translation would be he urges. Why? The verb hortator looks passive, but is translated actively. You would conjugate other conjugations similarly. So if I had a second conjugation verb where re, second conjugation deponent, I would do the same thing. Take off the ri. To this stem, I would add my endings. This, of course, means you fear. Looks like it's a present passive verb, but it's actually translated actively. The trickier thing with conjugating deponents comes into play with the third Io, and fourth conjugations. Mostly because their infinitive looks different, and also we know we're going to add different endings. So if I took the third conjugation deponent verb loqui, here it appears as though we don't have any ri to take off. Instead, what we're just going to take off is the I. To this base, I'm going to add my ending. Now, my ending would be tur for he speaks. But I know I can't add that in right by itself. I have to put something before that, which is the I. And this, of course, means he speaks. Looks passive, but is translated actively. Third Io would work the same. Take that off. Add my endings to this. This ending of untor, again, is a special ending that third and third Io are going to have. If it were active and a regular verb, it would be unt, that ending. Fourth will function the same way, except fourth, the infinitive for a fourth conjugation, is going to look a little bit more like what we're accustomed to with the first and second. Here, we're going to take off the ri, and to this base, we're going to add our ending. Our translation of this again is we test. Looks passive, but translated actively. The most important thing to remember when conjugating deponents is that they're going to function the same way as normal verbs do, except they're going to have passive endings instead of active endings. So if we think of the other tenses, up to this point in time we just worked with the present, if we think of the other tenses, something like the imperfect, I would still go to that infinitive. I would still take off the ri, but because this is first, the ending that I'm going to put on this is going to have an a before it. But if I were to do the same tense with another conjugation, like the third conjugation, I'd go to the infinitive, I'd take off that last letter. But because it's third, I'm going to have to add an e before I add my imperfect ending. Both of these look passive, but they're both going to be translated actively. If I had a third Io or fourth, I would do the same thing. Go to the infinitive, take off the ending, but because it's third Io and fourth, I'm going to add an IE before my ending. Here's a fourth. I take off the RI, and I end up with my ending. Both look passive, but are translated actively. Remember to be careful with these different tenses because sometimes what happens before the ending is different according to conjugation, but also sometimes the ending itself is different. Remember that for first and second conjugation, your future will look like this. But for third, third io, and fourth, you might have endings that look like this, or endings that look like this.